collapse is concerned, we're now learning that search and rescue teams in Sidoarjo on the Indonesian island of Java have recovered a total of 10 bodies from the rubble of the collapsed school. This has taken place 4 days after the tragedy. Now, despite intensive efforts, dozens of students still remain unaccounted for, with hopes for finding survivors now fading. The Khoziny Islamic Boarding School, a century-old institution, collapsed on Monday while construction crews were adding to unauthorized floors. Now, rescue workers initially searched by hand but have since deployed heavy machinery to speed up recovery efforts, but there has been no sign of life. About 105 students were injured, many with severe head injuries and broken bones, while 55 remain missing under the debris. They are unaccounted for at this time. With us on the broadcast is Mr. Ross Feingold, political analyst joining us from Taipei. Thank you so much for taking our time and speaking to us on NewsX World. The 72-hour golden window, the very crucial period where typically most survivors are found, that has already passed by. It's been 4 days since this terrible tragedy has taken place in East Java. But what this incident has done at the crux is raise a lot of questions about the structural safety and also the protocol that was overlooked while construction was taking place. We are learning that construction crews were in fact adding to unauthorized floors. Now, the regulations were clearly overlooked. So, what in your assessment should the local government bodies and the Indonesian government bodies do at large to ensure that such disasters, which are preventable, do not occur in the future?
You've identified the core issue here, which is that the local government was remiss in enforcing regulations at the local level, but ultimately, politically, this is going to flow back to the national government of Indonesia, especially at a time when the government of President Prabowo Subianto is under a lot of pressure. There were the recent protests about a variety of issues, including issues related to a school lunch program, issues related to corruption, issues related to allowances for members of parliament. So the national government is under tremendous pressure to basically improve their game. And this terrible tragedy happens at just the worst time for President Prabowo Subianto and his government. But even though this is, again, it's an issue that really should have been handled at the local level, but ultimately it's going to flow to the national level. And I'm sure we'll see national government officials say that we're going to do more, we're going to enforce regulations better, we're going to put pressure on local governments. So we'll see that kind of political show from senior politicians. Whether or not it'll actually bring about significant change, of course, that remains to be seen. Keeping in mind that this is not the first time that such kind of tragedies have occurred in Indonesia, where afterwards it was determined that infrastructure or buildings were not built in accordance with applicable regulations.
Indeed, you've clearly stated that this is likely to hurt Prabowo Subianto in the near future. But in your opinion, is it going to be a more grassroots-oriented criticism from the people itself, from the activists on the ground, or will opposition parties also capitalize on this tragedy, or would they avoid doing so, considering the nature of this incident?
Politics being politics, including in a democratic society like Indonesia, I would expect that not only would there be grassroots opposition, which could manifest itself in renewed protests, including in the capital, Jakarta, but I would expect opposition politicians to also try to benefit from this. Again, that would be typical in any democratic society. But keeping in mind that despite the protests or the presence of some opposition parliamentarians, President Prabowo Subianto really does control the government. That's not at risk at the moment, no matter how intense protests might become over the short term. So I think his approach is going to be, again, his government's going to say, we're going to do something about this. We're going to put more resources into enforcing regulations. We'll make more money available for local governments to do so. But what will be the result of that, only time will tell.
Indeed. And my last and final question then, the takeaways from what has transpired, is it enough to say that regulatory frameworks and having good frameworks in the first place do not ensure, safety and security, but because at the end of the day, it's the functioning of the local bodies, it's the implementation of these frameworks is what determines whether such an incident takes place or not?
That's a really interesting question, especially in the context of Indonesia, because this tragedy occurred at an Islamic school, and Islamic schools play a very important role in the education system. And parents and local government officials give enormous deference to these schools and really avoid, there's a history of avoidance of intervention in how these schools operate, including in how they add facilities or do construction on their campus. So whether or not officials want to criticize or intervene in these Islamic schools, that's an ongoing issue in Indonesia, and I would not expect it to be solved in the near term.
All right, so with that, I would like to thank you for taking out time, sharing your insights and analysis with us on NewsX World. With that, viewers, we're shifting focus towards more developments that we're tracking. The European Union is urging calm in Morocco, where anti-corruption protests have turned deadly.